90% of illegal immigrants first enter the EU via Greece, putting a huge strain on the economy. So should Europe shut the door on immigration? It is a hot political and economic issue. Join me, Nick Gowing, in Athens for this Intelligence Squared debate here on BBC World News.
With Greece, along with other countries on Europe's borders, facing tough financial challenges. Now on BBC World News, Intelligence Squared debate asks if Europe should shut the door on immigration.
Welcome to Athens. Europe should shut the door on immigration. That's the motion at this Intelligence Squared debate from Greece. Hello, I'm Nick Gowing and welcome to the Onassis Cultural Centre here in the heart of Athens. Immigration has really become an acute political issue right across Europe. Countries are struggling now with the economic downturn, and nowhere more so than here in Greece, currently in its 7th year of recession. Up to 9 out of 10 illegal immigrants come via this country, and it has fueled support for far-right parties like Golden Dawn. What can be done to stop it? Should strong border controls, new border controls, and other draconian measures be imposed to stop this influx? And if so, can they be enforced? Is Europe full of people? So, we're debating here tonight the motion, Europe should shut the door on immigration. And we have a stellar panel for you here tonight. Arguing for the motion, Douglas Murray, journalist, author of Neoconservatism, Why We Need It, and Associate Director of the Henry Jackson Society. Also, Makis Foridis, MP, Member of Parliament, former Conservative Minister in the last Greek coalition government. And on my left, against the motion, Dr. Bernard Kouchner, formerly the French Foreign Minister under President Sarkozy, and Antigone Liberaki, who is Professor of Economics in Athens, specialising in labour and development. Please welcome our 4 speakers tonight. Well, shortly you're going to hear from the 4 speakers here, 2 for the motion, 2 against. The debate will then be thrown open to the floor. The audience was polled as they came in to this cultural centre before the debate to find out what they were thinking on this motion as they arrived. We want to find out how they've kept to their position or swung as the debate swings here on the platform. They will vote again towards the end to find out how much change there has been. First, though, let's listen to the panellists to make their opening statements. First, for the motion, is Douglas Murray. Founded the Centre for Social Cohesion, which was integrated with the Henry Jackson Society, described by some as a right-winger. He's also the author of several respected books, including Neoconservatism, Why We Need It. Your time starts now.
Well, thank you very much. First of all, I should just lance a potential boil, I think, that may be present. It's not going to be my contention tonight, I don't think it's going to be my side's contention, that immigration is only a bad thing, that it only brings negatives. Of course, immigration has historically and can still bring some good things. Legal and illegal immigration, for instance, are totally separate things. The law is on one side and not on the other. Economic migration is one very distinct thing and very separate, for instance, from asylum. It is my belief that Europe should remain open to asylum seekers, that people who are genuinely fleeing persecution in other places should be able to find a sanctuary in Europe. So that is not one of the things that this side is going to be arguing against tonight. Of course, there has been some immigration across history on our continent. There have been Huguenots, Jews in Britain, we had Ugandan Asians. All of these things have gone on for many years, but not at all on the scale which we have seen in recent years. So we are talking about a scale that is totally different from anything that has gone before. And there's an additional point. All the politicians have got it wrong. All of them. All of their predictions have been wrong. Every time they have made a pronouncement about this, it has been wrong. In my country, we were told that when Poland and Polish workers were going to be allowed to come in, the Labour government said it'll be a few thousand, 650,000. That is an enormous magnitude to get something wrong, even for government. The recent census that's just been published at the end of last year in Britain demonstrated this. People who identify, after this massive period of mass immigration, people who identify themselves as white British people are now a minority in their capital city of London. We cannot expect that this will not have political consequences, and we cannot expect that people across Europe aren't going to feel something about that. If you become a minority in your own city, you are going to feel something about that. Of course, there are not only bad things that come from this, but there are some distinctly bad things that come from it. We have the problem, additionally, when migration happens at this speed, of the problem of integrating people. I wish it were possible to integrate people. I think it is possible to integrate people into Europe. But there is no way you can do it when you have this speed and this scale of migration. That is not when you get integration, that is when you get parallel communities and parallel lives. It is the right, I would contend, of European people, just like people from everywhere else in the world, to have an identity. To have an identity, to be able to be proud of it, to be able to wish to protect it, and not to be called names, including the worst names going, for having that identity and wishing to protect it. You will hear tonight, I make a prediction here. I'm not a politician, I can afford to do it. I make a prediction. The other side will tell you that nothing can be done. That mass migration is something which we're just going to have to live with. That it is impossible to deal with. I think this is dangerous. Very, very dangerous. It is a dangerous thing to say when public opinion across Europe wants something to be done, that nothing can be done. Democracies and democratic governments and classes have to respond to the desires of the people. They have to address them and they have to do something about it. We have to end the era of nothing can be done. If this is not dealt with by the mainstream, if this is not dealt with on the centre-left, on the centre-right, by people in the mainstream of politics, this territory, this ground will be given over to extremists. I very much hope that is not done. I think that we have the chance still to deal with this in a mainstream democratic way. I am not arguing, our side is not arguing that we slam, or we should slam, the door of immigration shut. I am certainly not arguing that we should lock that door. But at the very least, we need to give that door a firm but gentle push. Thank you.
So, no slamming or locking of the door, but certainly a gentle push. That's the argument for the motion. What about the argument against? Antigone Liberaki, currently a professor of economics at Pantheon University here in Athens, also a representative to the General Assembly of Action Aid International. She's advised governmental and non-governmental bodies and has written extensively on immigration and labour market issues.
Thank you. Europe is in crisis. This is a fact. Fiscal uncertainty, cuts, soaring unemployment are all capturing the attention of most governments. Migration policy, let alone migration strategy, is taking the back seat. In order to assess the merit of shutting the door on immigration, first we need to reflect on what we know about the issue. Well, what do we really know about immigration? We know a couple of things. First, that 1 out of 10 Europeans were born in other countries. So is 1 in 8 Americans, 1 in 5 Canadians, and 1 in 4 Australians. Nothing radical here. Second, we know that since the onset of the recession, fewer immigrants have arrived in Europe, but also fewer immigrants left Europe to return to their countries. Fewer than expected, I mean. The third thing that we know is that while politicians remain fixated with annual arrival numbers, the very assumption that Europe will remain an attractive hub for immigrants is very questionable. The fourth thing that we know is that we Europeans are experiencing a dramatic worsening of demographics. This creates a stark dilemma. Either we make do with shrinking populations and massive tax increases, which incidentally may fuel an exodus of Europeans to other places of the world in order to avoid taxes, thus exacerbating the problem of fewer people of working age staying in Europe. Or we have to rethink and reconsider the case of relaxing immigration policies in order to put more people into the system, provided, of course, that we ensure that they get integrated not only into the labor market, but also into the society. The fifth thing that we know is that most politicians get wrong the relationship between immigration and unemployment. They get it completely wrong. An extra immigrant does not take a job away from someone else, does not, I repeat, because the amount of jobs available in a society, in an economy, is not fixed. The labor market does not, I repeat, does not work like the game of musical chairs. So it is not a question of what I gain, you lose, or what you gain, I lose. This might seem counterintuitive in a time of crisis and high unemployment, but let me just give you 2 facts from the experience of Greece. The first is that the Greek economy absorbed in the 1990s more than 1 million immigrants, who, without increasing the unemployment rate, actually it decreased, but enabling the rate of growth to rise above the puny rates of the 1980s. The second point is that on a more structural level, the arrival of women immigrants allowed the creation of a new market for care of all people and children, which allowed many women to leave their home and work on their own. Now, the sixth thing that we know is that we need to examine the contribution of migrants in a more dynamic way. Not only skills for today that we need, but still skills for tomorrow and ideas for tomorrow. The mobility of people is an important stepping stone for dynamism, constant adaptation, and innovation. Far from shutting the door on immigration, we need to integrate it into the vision of the future of Europe in 20 years' time, because we need to attract more migrants, and also because we Europeans have a moral obligation towards the rest of the world, and we cannot prosper in our ivory tower, because no such tower really exists. Thank you.
Antigone Liberaki there, speaking against the motion that Europe should shut the door on immigration. Let's get the second voice supporting, speaking for the motion. Makis Foridis, who is minister in the previous Greek Conservative government, spokesman for the New Democratic Party, New Democracy Party, first elected as an MP with the Popular Orthodox Rally Party, which sits on the right and strongly opposes immigration. Makis Foridis, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I will have to try and convince you to support the motion that Europe should start the door on immigration. And in order to achieve that, I want you to think whether you should vote or you would vote on exactly the different motion. Should Europe open the door on immigration? Should it have it wide open? Should we have and adopt a policy of open door to immigration? Because if you decide for a no on that question, then rationally you should vote for yes on the other. Now, let's suppose we would adopt the position to have an open door policy on immigration. What would then happen? This would practically mean that anyone from any place in the world would be welcome to decide in which place of Europe he would like to go. And let's also raise another parameter, which also we have to deal with. Do we accept that every people, every nation, has the right to have a national identity, has the right to have its core values? And are those values challenged from massive immigration or not? Don't we have experience of that? Don't we have such kind of confrontation? Don't we feel in some areas of Greece alienated, like those areas really now do not belong in the Greek territory? Don't we experience the consequences in a cultural level of this massive and uncontrolled immigration? So the question is, do we now want to have an open door policy, or do we want to have a principled policy of migration? I say that if you believe the second one, then of course you are to vote for the motion. And also, I will argue that we face in Greece another phenomenon, a most dangerous phenomenon, a most crucial phenomenon. Because of the lack of this kind of migratory strategy, because of the lack of the existence in all levels of state controlling those migratory flows, who now tries to do the job of the state? A neo-Nazi group, Golden Dawn. When did we in Greece have become National Socialists or neo-Nazis? When did that happen? This has happened exactly because for many, many years, under ideas of open door policy, in practice, of non-existing policies, we have accepted year after year thousands and thousands, up to millions of immigrants. The state was not there. The state was not in the neighborhoods. The state was not there to confront the crime. The state was not there to protect the labor market. The state was non-existing. Who now is trying to fill this gap? An extreme right group of the worst kind. Are we going even to accept jeopardizing the level of our democracy, our social cohesion, our democratic traditions, our democratic institutions, just because we do not want to face a simple fact that we have to regulate immigration? Is that possible? I think that even the experience we have from recent governmental practice shows that yes, it is possible. We can regulate immigration, we can control it, we can make it rational, and after all, we can get the best out of it. Thank you.
Makis Voridis, the second voice firmly in favour of the motion. Now, the second voice against the motion, Bernard Kouchner, formerly the foreign minister in the government of President Sarkozy, founder of Médecins Sans Frontières, strong pro-European, and written extensively advocating policies to control immigration by helping to develop countries which generate the largest number of immigrants seeking new lives, particularly in the European Union.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Let me share with you the basic truth. Whether you answer yes or no, there is no way to stop completely immigration. There is no way to prevent any human being from trying to seek a better future. You can try and build walls, barbed wires, camps. You can try and send them back. You can try and slow down the process. Sometimes it happens. It is inevitable that your wealth, even if you are suffering, even if it is a very difficult crisis to cross against, it is inevitable that your world act as a magnet. But who are the immigrants? And what can we do? Through wars, famines, pandemic, and just the need for cheap manpower, Europe has always been a continent for migrations. You always appear to be the immigrant in somebody else's eye. In the past centuries, all it took was to be from a village 5 miles away from your village to be a migrant. Going back to 3 generations, 1/3 of the French population came from immigration. Until the second half of the 20th century, immigration was coming from the rest of Europe, Italy, Poland, Spain, Greece, everywhere, Portugal, etc. Then came the people from Northern Africa, then Sub-Saharan Africa. This is globalization. I'm very sorry. Do you shut the door to globalization? This is very uneasy. Migration has to do with fear. Poor immigrants have always been suspected of bringing in all sorts of evil which our society have already suffered from. They become a reflection on our own state of mind, of our own obsession and our own fears. What can we do? 5 points. It is a paradox in this time of globalization and increased mobility. There have never been more regulation and control. It doesn't work. Second point, EU members should share the burden in a more balanced and fair fashion. Immigration not be shared by all the 27 countries of Europe. Third point, an international law and national law will coincide together to sentence the people in charge of the trafficking, slaveries, trafficking of human beings. 4 points. Selective immigration has worked sometimes in America and Canada, but not from people coming from Mexico and South America. There are today very well-trained European professionals who leave their native country. But we need skilled immigration also. So my conclusion, migrants are never coming to our countries, rich countries, for fun. They are not coming with a spirit of conquistador. They are coming because of the necessity, flying out, fugitive, or extreme poverty. The poor are always attracted by the rich, even when the rich are becoming unhappy, miserable, and unemployed. But we should be careful, and thank you for saying so. Fighting against migration drives us to a more nationalist and sometimes racism. And you know what nationalism, extreme racism, and racism drove Europe. Thank you very much.
Bernard Kouchner, thank you very much indeed. So you've had 2 presentations from those supporting the motion, 2 from those against the motion. Now it's your turn. I want to hear from as many of you as possible. First, though, let me give you the result of what you said as you came into this debate at the beginning, before you heard the voices for and against the motion at this Intelligence Squared debate here in Athens. 24% of you were undecided. That means there's a lot still to play for on either side from the speakers. Those against were 55%. Those for the motion were 21%. So you've got a lot of work to do to try and convince the 24%, but you could technically still make it close to something like equality, or at least a division of about 50-50. Now, who would like to speak from the floor? Put your hand well up. Over there first, please.
My name is Christina Poulit, and I would like the part for the motion. If your name was Hassan and you were born in Syria nowadays, how would you argue tonight, frankly speaking?
I would like to make a point to Mr. Murray, and I would like to ask you why you feel that the presence of 1 or 2 or 1,000 people with a different identity within a society threatens the identity of the people who were in the society originally. Whether you believe that is a legitimate concern or a primal fear, and whether you agree that when a primal fear drives a crowd, they become a mob, and that a politician should follow a mob and not provide leadership by calming the mob down and giving them a reason.
Thank you. And towards the back.
I am against the motion, and I would like to say that the European Union was an ex-colonial power, so most of the countries of the Third World were exploited from us. So now we cannot say that we don't accept them, because most of their riches and their wealth were taken from us. And Mr. Voridis talked about our values as European citizens, as humans. Well, I think globalization takes them from us and not immigrants.
Douglas Murray, your response particularly to that challenge to you.
Very quickly, first of all, if I were Hassan in Syria, I would hope, among other things, that I would help to rebuild my country after the Assad dynasty had wrecked it so completely. I'd hope that I would stay and help to rebuild the country after the devastation caused by that family. Secondly, the gentleman here who said, why are you threatened by 1 or 2 people? I'm not threatened by 1 or 2 people. Nobody is threatened by 1 or 2 people. The figures I gave you showed we're not talking about 1 or 2 people. The figure I gave you at the very beginning was that people who identify as white British citizens are now a minority in their capital cities. So we're not talking about 1 or 2 people, and it is very disingenuous to pretend that I was. Thirdly, the lady at the back, you say colonialism. I'd like to return the question to you. I don't deny the crimes of colonialism, not for a moment. I'd like to ask you a question. How long do former colonial countries have to be punished for, then? One of the largest and most significant and longest colonial powers in history was the Turkish Empire. Do we do this to Turkey? Do we say to Turkey, you must have your identity erased as well as punishment for the past? Almost every single people in the world at some point has done something historically they could be punished for. But why, I wonder, is it that it is Europeans that we are always being heard, being offered that choice?
Douglas Murray, thank you. Before we go to Makis Voridis, Bernard Kouchner.
This is not a colonial problem, but we have particular relation between the former colonialist power and the former colonies. We have a double responsibility. That's why, including shutting the borders for them, it's impossible. But this is a moral reason. Practically, really practically, you cannot close the border. It has been tried several times, 1,000 times.
Makis Voridis, some challenges there from the floor.
The question, the identity issue. First of all, could you or would you accept that there could be identity clashes? Or should we accept it in a cultural relativist way? Or would you react the same, for example, if there are traditions who treat women inhumanly in a way that are completely negative and alien to our tradition? If I remember correctly, Greece was never a colonial country. and was actually never colonized. So could I please not take the blame for whatever is done from colonial powers? We are part of the European Union, but I do not consider European Union as a collective colonial power.
Let's get some more thoughts at this stage.
Can I get in just a second?
Antigone.
Right. On the question of values, communities holding different values and identities are perceived as threat only when they're discriminated against to such a degree that they feel they're not part of the community, and this is the reason why they are pushed into extreme behaviors. Allowing religious freedom, and of course the example. You have to let me finish because this is not my native language, and I have difficulty.
But there are countries there that they have recognized all kinds of rights, and this is not the case. There are still
you allow him to
this is
I'm encouraging conversation.
This is not conversation. This is bullying. All right. I find...
Well, it has been asked.
I find very interesting, coming from the lips of a member of a parliament, of a government that refuses to build a mosque in Athens, to invoke the problem of discrimination against women as different identity, while keeping himself completely silent on the question of religious freedom. This has to be underlined.
We've had some challenges to those speaking for the motion. I want some challenges now to those who are speaking against the motion. Right, you at the back, please. I can't see you very well. Stand up.
Okay, hi. I'm undecided. I think that we all agree that there is a big issue here, but it's one thing to talk about the problem, but it's another thing to talk about solutions. So we all agree we have a problem, but I haven't heard any solutions.
Thank you.
My name is Andre, and I'm half Lebanese, half Syrian, half Canadian. Okay?
How can you be half of each when there are three?
Well, I don't...
Our mathematics when adding up the votes will be better than that.
My mom was a very beautiful woman. Anyway, I am for the motion because I think that in Europe, immigration is a total hypocrisy. Why? Because from my experience as an immigrant to Canada, when someone goes into your country as an immigrant or as legal or illegal immigrant, he has to be equal to you in every single matter, meaning right to vote, right to elect, right to be elected, free education, training for skills, free hospitality, and a chance to have a career. If you look at the immigrant as a second-class person, you're not going to have a policy of immigration that is fair. And this is why I'm for the motion, because it's not fair in Europe. It's hypocrisy.
Antigone Liberaki and Bernard Kouchner, a hypocrisy.
Well, I think that our good friend with a delicious mother is a doctor killing the patient. Killing the patient. Because, of course, you're right. You have all the rights in coming to a country, but not overnight. And certainly not with the public opinion in times of crisis like now. So it takes time. But of course, the right of vote in some European countries is already accepted. In others, like mine, not enough. And we'll see. But you cannot ask...
The accusation is hypocrisy there.
Yes, but hypocrisy is not the good word. Hypocrisy is to say that we'll close the door, as in fact we already closed the door since several years without any success. That is hypocrisy. And in a political campaign, you say, oh, but with me, no more migrants. Yes, madam, yes, sir. No, this is not true. That is hypocrisy.
I take your point that ideally this should be the case. Everybody should be completely equal to anybody else. I think we should not forget this, but we have to make sure that we adopt the steps that will get us there and not to hell backwards. So I can see that there can be some tactic movement.
Douglas. Douglas Murray.
Can I come back on that? I like the fact that migration has occurred. What I do not like, and what a lot of people do not like, is when instead of cosmopolitanism, you get such mass migration as we have had in recent years, that you have parallel communities, parallel lives. I have been to Paris, Bernard. I have seen your banlieue. These are not cosmopolitan. These are single racial entities where they live separate lives in the same city.
How can you select that?
Well,
At
because
the
you're
border?
here.
One is okay, the other is not?
No.
Man, no, you have to work in their country. Exchange your immigration to going there, develop the countries with them, etc. This is one of the recipe, but it takes time. Another.
Okay, can I?
Sorry.
Because there was a question about there are there solutions. Are there any solutions? You made an argument that actually what's happening is inevitable. I mean, and we can't stop it. We just try to slow it down, but it's inevitable. I'm saying no, it's not inevitable. It can be done. We can regulate migration, and to tell you the truth, there are many, many solutions. One of it, and yes, on the question of hypocrisy, I'll tell you one hypocrisy. The hypocrisy of EU, which actually puts all the burden in Greece, saying that we must handle all the possible immigration in the best possible way. But if you ask the EU that they share the burden, and I agree there with Bernard, but they won't accept it. And of course there should be border controls. We should control, and we can control.
We are controlling every day.
But I'll give you the Greek experience. Until recently, the control was only verbal and legal, but not actual. When we actually started controlling, we got results. We got results.
And
very
so you share
specific
with me,
results.
You share with me the idea of sharing among all the European countries, which was not the case.
That's the only one I share. Yeah.
But you're not okay. So easy.
I would like to raise the point that the fear of the other and the unfamiliar is being politically promoted at a time of crisis as a substitute for dealing with the crisis, as a personification and shifting the blame for the crisis to those least able to answer back. Don't do that mistake, please.
Sorry, very quickly. I don't think. Can I just very quickly? I'm noticing this. I don't see the crisis being blamed on immigrants, and quite rightly not. The crisis, as I see it in Europe, is mainly blamed on bankers. It's mainly blamed on financiers. I mean, maybe we're watching different debates.
Let's talk about migration. Please, who's got the microphone up there?
Hello, I'm Vasilis Papadopoulos. I'm currently undecided, and I would like to address Douglas Murray. Since he mentioned two completely different things, which is actually true about cities immigrants are arriving in. Are there two different societies, two parallel societies, or are the actual locals losing their identity? How are they losing it if there are two different and parallel societies?
Douglas Murray, quickly.
I'd like to just come back to the point I was trying to make, which is this, is that you can integrate people if you have integration at the if you have immigration at the kind of speed which it did go through in centuries past. But if you have migration at the speed at which it is now happening, the examples I gave, the same amount of immigration every couple of weeks, every couple of months, as was happening across centuries before, then you cannot integrate people. Then you have no hope of integrating people. Then people will come in, they will not have to meet anyone from the society they are going into, and they will lead parallel lives. And there are all sorts of miseries that come from that.
Two parallel societies at the same time. I think this is a very good example of the prejudice against migrants. You are doomed if you mingle because you affect natives, but you're also doomed if you stay separately because you sort of keep an identity.
Right. Let me take it further towards the back, please. Who's got the microphone?
I do.
Okay, over there, please.
I believe that this question of the motion wouldn't exist if two things were happening. First, if Greece had a serious immigration policy, meaning how many people we can afford, and secondly, if the government was performing its duties, meaning protecting the citizens in this country. Now, the question is when this will happen in this country, I'm for the motion, and the question is mainly addressed to the panelists who most probably will govern this country one day. Thank you.
Microphone down here, please.
And Mr. Voridis, one of your arguments, Golden Dawn is rising because it is filling the gap of the structure. You're an MP of New Democracy Government Coalition Party. Do you believe that we should close the borders because the government is unable to take measures to fill the gap instead?
Okay. Okay, so I think those two questions are actually related, and I'll have to tell you, yes, that actually the government is doing what now is doing what it should be done, and I think that that's a response coming too late, after too many years of actually no action, and because of that, you do have now the phenomenon at such a growth, and the reaction of the Greek people, which one must take into consideration. Because I'm telling you, no one, I think, actually believes that 10% of our people, of our citizens, have become and turned the last 6 months into extremists of that kind. But the fact that for too many years, no policy applied, I think, yes, it does provide an answer to this social and political phenomenon. And the way to address that is that the government should keep doing what it has continued to do, which is exactly the opposite of what the other side is proposing.
Politicians have a great responsibility for having 10% of the population sharing neo-Nazi views. Politicians both from the right and from the left, because on the right they thought that they should not alienate people with racist feelings, and they should not let them drop out of the system. By meeting them halfway through, that means adopting part of their agenda, thus legitimizing them. The left, when the indignados were in Syntagma Square, on the top part of the square were the neo-Nazis, and the lower part of the square were the leftists, and they were united in shouting abuse at the parliament, and by doing so there was a tacit understanding that my enemy's enemy is my friend, and so all these ideas were received implicitly as forces acceptable within the pale.
More views, please. A lady there has the microphone.
Hello, my name is Daphne Kapetanaki. I'm from the UNHCR office in Athens.
Which is refugees, UN refugees.
Agency for Refugees, yeah. How would the policy of shutting the doors, literally, at the borders, ensure access to the EU territory for persons seeking international protection, for whom EU member states have a duty to protect according to international law?
Thank you. Who's got the microphone over here, please?
My name is Yannis Paradisiadis, I'm a student, and the members of the supporting team made what I think is a valid point about the cultural effects of immigration. But my question to them is, do they think there's a difference between an immigrant from inside of Europe and between an immigrant from outside of Europe? And if yes, consider the example of Bosnia and Herzegovina. Would you rather, and especially you, Mr. Voridis, Greece received an immigrant from Bosnia and Herzegovina who is an ethnic Bosniak, therefore likely to be Muslim, or an ethnic Croatian or Serb, therefore likely to be a Christian?
Who wants the microphone there? A lady there, I think in green.
My name is not Hassan, my name is Efrosini, it's Greek. And my last name is Al-Youssef. My father is Syrian, my mother is Greek. And I can assure you that I love Greece as much as both of my parents love Greece. I'm not a criminal. My father is not a criminal. My whole family are not criminals. But all my life, I have been insulted and bullied. And now the people that insult me and bully me are the criminals of the Golden Dawn. And I just want to say that this country is not friendly to immigrants. So instead of worrying about the criminality of both sides from the criminals and from the members of the Golden Dawn, how about we teach the kids and we all learn to be friendly for a change?
Thank you.
Thank you.
I know so many of you still want to intervene, but we've got to begin to bring this to a close. The motion is Europe should shut the door on immigration. What influence has this debate had on you. You know how you voted when you came in. They were undecided as well. Which way have you swung? Have you changed your view or not? At this point, I can now give you the result.
Well,
what has happened in terms of your perception of the migration issue, certainly when it comes to the European Union, and should the door be shut on immigration? Let me remind you what the vote was when you came into this debate. For the motion, 21%. Against the motion, 55%. 24% of you had not made up your minds. Well, 13% of you are still undecided, but there has been a significant swing in favour of the motion. 38% have voted for the motion compared to 21%, and against the motion, 49% as opposed to 55%.
So we won.
So we won.
So I declare the motion has been defeated, but there has been a significant swing during this debate here in Athens. Thank you to the speakers. Thank you to the panelists here at the Onassis Cultural Centre in the heart of Athens. Thank you to you for taking part in the debate. A lively debate, hearing both sides and particularly the emotions on the politics and the economics of migration and immigration here in the European Union. Our thanks as well to Intelligence Squared Greece for making all this possible. Goodbye from me, Nick Gowing, and everyone here in Athens in Greece. Bye-bye.